Welcome to another episode of Ask Your Doctors. Remember, you set the agenda. You send us the questions, we look for the relevant people to come and give you the simplest answers from the most sophisticated of backgrounds. Yes, we are back. And we are back with a bang. I'm back with Dr. Tiny Minga. Hi, Doc. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
All right, thank you.
Good, good.
I'm all right. We have a treat again today. We have a treat. We have Anele Siswana. Anele Siswana is a clinical psychologist and a spiritual healer. Prepare yourself to be blown away. And I can guarantee you, he's not going to be able to cover anything in one episode. So whatever you pick up from here, please prepare more questions, because when he comes back, he will have prepared the answers to even more of the questions that Dr. Minga and I are thinking we must formulate after the episode. How are you, sir? Aye. Thank you. Tell us, Anele, what is a clinical psychologist?
I think as a start...
Maybe before you start, you made a request, and I asked you to eat before Kay could sit down. After your experience in my office, can you tell us who you are? I think that is more important.
I like that, Minga. Yes. It's always important for me, when people ask me, who is Anele? I always ask, what part of Anele do you want to know? So I am Anele who lives in the normal world that we know, and Anele who belongs, I call it the underground gang. So that is my ancestors, those who walk with me. So when I define who Anele Siswana is, and I like to give people, who is Siswana, by the way? Siswana is my grandfather's surname, who was married to my grandmother. So Siswana is an identity. Siswana is one who gifted and gave birth to who you see in front of you. So who Anele is a young man who belongs to the underground gang, but at the same time, who happens to relate with the world in the way of how he understands it. So I always again draw people to his Tagazelozan, that is Umguni, Okao, and all of those people who walk with me. That's the most fundamental part of that I always bring people to the attention to say, Anele Siswana is all of these things, but his beingness is entrenched deeply in being Siswana.
Can you brag to us a little bit about your Stakazelo? Can you?
Isakazelo sa umguni ogawu ke bashimafuza fulele hama naye ke ugogo utolo dla ngamandla umcenga mabhane kaze uvumala impongolo yanuka naye ke ujilo gwaqaqqa masengwa inkomelelele ngecala ngoma ibili yakhaba uZulu calmation office uMakewa uJola umphankomo uqhengewa naba bonke ngihamba nawo isithakazelo zami ke ezamakhehle nogogo, those who have gifted me. And again, leading to the question is, what is a psychologist? One of the things that I got to understand, for me, being a psychologist was a gift. I did not choose psychology. Psychology found me. And when people ask me, what do you mean by that? The first time I heard of psychology, I was doing grade 10. And since then, I didn't even know the aesthetics of what a psychologist does. So from grade 10, I knew what I wanted to do. At some stage, I wanted to do ministry. I wanted to study theology, to be a Methodist minister. But then I realized, I love soft life. I can't be a minister. And being a minister, it would mean that now I have to rely on church. But beyond that, I also discovered that actually ministry is not going to work because I'm gay. And I'm not going to allow myself to be changed to having to marry a woman. So I ran away from ministry. And I knew then psychology would be my course that I would then study. But I didn't have the minimum requirements of studying psychology. So it was my third option when I wanted to go to university. For some reason, I got it as a first offer. But then again, I had to do an assessment that needed to prove, I mean, you can imagine from Ekasi, my marks were not that great. Then I did an oral exam, and I did another exam where they were asking me general questions, and I happened to have passed that. And since my registration for first year, I've never failed any course. I finished my degree in good time. Oh, by the way, I didn't have the highest grades or one of the nicest flying colors grades, which speaks to I was chosen.
I was about to say it was driven your way.
It was driven my way.
Yeah.
And I happen to have had the intellectual capacity of understanding the sophistication of that. Subsequent to my training, I took a gap year because I didn't have money to go and study for my master's. Even there, to get to master's with only a mere 4-year degree, it is a challenge to get to be selected to be a clinical psychologist in South Africa. So I managed to have been the cohort that was selected. I always call the 12 disciples. At Rhodes, they select 12 candidates. And I was one of the candidates. And when people ask me what kind of a disciple I was, I always say, I was John, the closest to Jesus. You know? And since then, even then, when I got to the master's program, it's thousands of people that apply. But I believe those whom I work with knew that I'm ordained for this. So for me, being a clinical psychologist is a calling. It's a choice. My ability to discern and listen and understand what they wanted from me, for some reason I understood, and the universe responded. So it is a calling for me. It is beyond being an intellectual engagement, but I needed to have the gift of understanding what it means to be human for me to be able to exercise that. And we'll touch on other aspects of my ancestral calling where it came in, because one of the most things that you need as a psychologist is the ability to discern, but mostly the ability to read between the lines. There's what we get taught, the Freudian way, psychoanalysis, CBT, you name it. But there's an inherent gift of intuition, that which enables you to see through things that other people don't see. And it has been that gift. And I mean, you asked me, how's my practice been doing? I didn't struggle because I don't run that practice. It's run by those who chose me. So every day when I get to my practice, Babu Minga, I pray, and say, I'm here to do what you've asked me to do. The minute my ego and my mind takes over, remind me that this is not about me, but about your service.
It helps a lot, that.
Yes.
The constant reminder, Doc, of you don't count the number of patients for you to measure your fulfillment in a day. It helps a lot, that. Because it's about more than just, I mean, we wouldn't be doing what we are doing.
Definitely.
You hardly have time to breathe in your practice. You don't have time to breathe. I don't have time to breathe.
I even forget to eat.
We decide we want to do more. We want to give a different perspective of health and wellness.
Definitely.
To the communities.
Well, the question to you, now that you are both, okay, spiritual healer and a clinical psychologist, right? And with a little bit of it, being maybe, no, I know that you're not ordained as a priest, but you've got an inclination towards that.
Yes.
Theology.
Theology, yes, I didn't want to mention that, but I didn't want to mention that because...
My theology is very complicated.
Yeah, okay. Would you... There's a belief lately that why the black nation is struggling with the things that we're trying to achieve is because we are praying the wrong God that is not assigned to black people. So this is very serious because
Yes.
some of the people in high authority, not in this country, all over the world, they say, but look at these people. Who are they praying? Because whoever you pray, call it an ancestor, call it your God, it must be someone who is relevant to you. So if there's no relevance in who you are praying, who is taking up your prayer? Because it can only be accepted and be taken by the people who are relevant to you. And with the current type of the so-called God and Christ, it's not ours. Would you agree with me?
It's interesting, Dr. Mingan, that you're raising this in a medicalized talk. I mean, I imagine medicine, science to be science. Maybe as a start.
Just let me make you comfortable.
Yes.
Let me I know you're comfortable already for many reasons. This is meant to be. But let me just remind our audience, Uti, we know when I was doing community dentistry in 1991,
Sure.
we were told
91.
behave. we were told that when you see your patient, they have been through the basics that they know. So your patient goes through they pray, they go through their own healer. They come to you for a third or fourth opinion. And you will do what you do, and if you do not try and connect, you cannot heal someone medically only if they don't entirely believe in the process.
Great. And maybe to come in there as an interjection there. Maybe as a start, I must start by saying Africans have always been healers. Africans have always been doctors.
With or without Western medicine.
Oh, yes.
We have, Dr. Menga would agree that, and you would know, why do we have indigenous medicine? Even though the West has decided to put on random trials and do all of those kind of things to give legitimacy. But I believe our people back in the days, they had their own ways of what they conceptualized, what it means to be well. What wellness was back in the days, it was a science on its own. And I want to demystify these notions that say indigenous knowledge systems is unscientific. Indigenous knowledge systems, for me, it is scientific. And the reason why I'm saying it is scientific, the fact that it's not written, some of these knowledges and systems of Umhlonyane and many other imiti that we use as Africans, they are not documented. It doesn't make it as an unscientific thing, because through oral tradition, the reason why we know that Umhlonyane still works, it is an indigenous practice that was orally communicated and preserved over time. Now, if you were to ask the theology of God and the indigenous people, they knew nothing else but what they knew, that when they connect with the spirit, why do we have rain queens? Those gogos and kulus in the Mingas in your family who would be requested particularly to pray for rain. Why do we have midwives that were not trained, but they knew when the water breaks, what do we do?
And they knew what to tell the men when there's going to be a baby in the house.
Definitely, of course.
They say.
No, but I'll give you a very practical example. I was born a premature, in a very bad premature. Discharged from the hospital prematurely as well, because there were problems at the hospital. Taken home, my mother came to fetch me from the hospital in a shoebox. That's how small I was.
Shoebox.
And I stayed shoebox, stuffed with cotton wool. When I arrived at home with my mom, my grandmother, who was a matric at home, she gave one instruction to everybody, not even my father saw me. She said, no one must come close to this child. I'm going to feed him. So I was fed by her and my mother. And the instruction, right, was that fortunately we had, you know, enough animals at home. It must be given fresh, uncooked milk from the goat 4 times a day.
You see.
4 times
Yeah,
a
and
day.
that's science right there.
Yeah,
That's
and
science.
there were guys who were assigned.
4 times a day.
Yeah,
That's the prescription.
yeah. They were assigned to milk those goats 4 times a day, and whatever was left was thrown away. Right? And that happened for over 6 weeks. Okay? And because of their knowledge of life and death and sickness, no one touched me. Not even my father saw me. And until, I think it was 6 weeks, when I think I sneezed for the first time. And that to them signaled one thing, that I've got strong muscles. In other words, I'm alive. That's when they started clapping hands to say, he's alive. And then they started coming to see me. So it took the whole family, including my father, 6 weeks before they could see me. And I was being fed on a daily basis my mother's milk and the goat's milk. So it's a knowledge that my grandmother had. And she knew about infections, wherever she learned that from. She knew about nutrition. And that when people come and see this tiny baby, I was going to get infected. Probably I would not be sitting here today. But she had that knowledge. And she gave that authority. She said, no one must come close to this child, except her and my mother. And I was fed on goat's milk. So I just want to add to what you just said, that the knowledge of health and death and sickness was known. And they understood that if a child could sneeze, it means the muscles, including the muscles of the chest, are strong enough to can cough and sneeze. That signals life. That's when people started coming around me and see me.
And in case there's a young person out there watching this, listening this, following this, asking themselves, how come I always dismiss my elders' knowledge as primitive, as irrelevant, as this is the reason why? And I'm looking at the questions here.
I still want to go back to what Doctor asked earlier.
Yeah, I know. He's a psychologist. He listens between the lines. He reads between the lines, so he will not let you sit on the couch and not answer you. Because
Let me not make it academic.
No, I was just saying the questions here.
Yeah.
And the audience must just forgive us because we can never handle all of this in one go.
I think this question.
And they were never ready for this kind of interaction. The level at which it's going is another level. But anyway.
So, ideally, my world is very discursive. I'm queer, black, gay man, who happens to be a psychologist, who happens to be a healer. Now, my world is discursive in a sense that it's always on two worlds. Being a psychologist, it operates from a very Western, Eurocentric way of existence. Freud, all we know is from all of that space. Now, being a healer is indigenous. So there am I was trained at Rhodes University, trained to be very posh, right? I was never prepared to work in Soweto. I was never prepared to work at Qunu. But the psychology I was given was that of a high-functioning, middle-class, high-class person. So ideally, in the end, one of the things that I did at Rhodes, my dissertation was rejected 2 times. Ask why. My topic was very indigenous. I told them, I can't do research on depression. My research was on what are the psychological factors that contribute to Xhosa male initiation. What is the psychology of initiation? It's not about the cutting of the penis only. For us, it's about formation. It's about training. It's about formation. It's about cultivating and helping this young man transition from childhood to boyhood, from boyhood to manhood.
Already were.
Now, I couldn't use Erik Erikson's theory to explain that developmental stage.
Yeah.
And I was asked, what theory are you going to use? I said, I have got no theory. So my proposal was rejected twice, which eventually, by God's grace, it was accepted with a question as to what are the psychological factors that contribute to Xhosa masculinity. Right? At the end of the day, my findings suggested how can Ulalugo be an effective psychological lens of looking at raising young Xhosa boys. That was an indigenous topic. In my practice throughout, I've always even asked questioned ethics. HPCSA, I'm sure whoever was drawing those ethics really was sitting in Sentin or in a very soft life space. Those ethics are good enough. I don't have any issues with ethics. But with some of the African people that we work with, now, a patient comes to Dr. K, right? And HPCSA is going to say, you only have that therapeutic relationship with Dr. K, right? Mm. Now, people have heard that Dr. K is amazing and Dr. Ming is amazing. Dr. Minga becomes the doctor of the entire family because they consider you to be a family doctor. Mm. Now, HPCSA is going to tell you of boundaries and all of that. In an African context, every family has a healer. Every family has a healer. Dr. Minga is, they know.
And all healers are community leaders.
Community leaders. So ideally, where I'm sitting at is being a healer who is trained traditionally, which is I've also infused ethics in there as to how to optimize our standard of practice as traditional healers. Because at the end of the day, again, Bob Minga, traditional healers, they are legit ones and they are non-legit ones, of course, in any kind of training. But for us who are legit, who happen to be called and gifted with both the intellectual understanding, you can ask me anything on how I separate the diagnosis of a pure psychosis and Uktwasa. I will take you through that. Because I've got the academic understanding of how to separate and tease the DSM from the indigenous clinical presentation that helps me to understand and unpack that. Mm. Now, there are these other aesthetics again. Now, if you talk of African spirituality, the kind of spirituality that Africans post-colonization and being colonized, it has been that of Jesus, right? Jesus, who is the ultimate and nothing else. Which means that when Jesus was introduced to us, we were somehow brainwashed to forget what was our way of connecting with God. Now, I've chosen to be a rebel. For some reason, I studied theology for 2 years for non-degree purposes because I didn't see how the degree is going to help me. So I studied for non-degree, and I got to understand that Jesus is interesting. So the kind of spirituality that I operate in is very discursive. It operates, I pray, because I'm raised Christian, I can't undo my Christian ways of looking at the world. I can't undo the ways of how I know, but I'm going to slaughter. I don't call Jesus there. I call all my clan names and everyone who needs to be called because they've got to participate in there.
So you're like a complete house in a township.
No,
it's got burglar proofing. It's got and you still call someone now every 6 months to come and sunset to come and do ishoba.
And just one last thing is my practice. I'm in Sentin, but I just happen to say my ancestors were very bougie, right? Yeah. They operate in Sentin. In my practice, I accommodate both worlds. Yeah. You would swear when you get in there. Am I in the room? I call it Indumba office. It's my Indumba layer. Bob Minga knows like in Lapa, and a psychologist for me, I call it Umlapi. That you are a healer beyond using a DSM. By the time someone walks out in there, when they say Umambuzi, how are you feeling? I think that's not in the DSM. A DSM is going to ask you about the prognosis. All it is going to tell you that I'm well.
Coincidentally, one of our most recent episodes that we covered, we ended it with where to from here. And Doc, you know, and it was as a follow-up to men's health and mental health in males, so to speak. So another very elusive topic. So now, just to throw a spanner to the works, in case you are a man and we said consult a clinical psychologist, now guys are going to ask themselves, which one must I go for? Must I go for one that will understand my, must I go for one that will connect with me when I say, beyond this, I also wish you was umsebenzi? Because if you go to another psychologist and you say, I think the puzzle will be complete if ungayenza umsebenzi. Some psychologists might say, what does that mean?
No, actually, that's why my practice is thriving, because the gift of Minga to see in between, I'm able to say, actually, there's something about your surname. What's going on in there? And then you get to understand that this person is not using the surname that they should be using, but how you are able again to channel that message, because I said the Indumbalea, right? So I will use the clinical aspects of things. Ideally, there are people, predominantly my clientele, it's abantu abathwasile, abokoko nomkhulu, khulumangmang and all of that, who their experience would not be disqualified or discredited as they're psychotic. Because their position of the etiology of their illness touches back on those things that are not in the
etiology DSM. Means the source or the progression, yes, of
all those things. So now, immediately someone comes in and beps, I know I've got to say Togoza or Tamago, right? Because ideally at that time they may not be acknowledging me, but they're acknowledging the sacred space that they've entered, because that's not my office. I just happen to be the one that is a channeler at that time. So if someone says, hey, I feel like in Yazam's Yashis, I want to take off my shoes. Oh, well, good. Or someone says, hey, Okoko doesn't want to sit on the chair. I take Utsansalami to sit on the floor. We do therapy. And then someone is going to say, ish, it feels like this Kokola when you sniff. I already have a sniff. Right? Because I'm accommodating the space. And I'm acclimatizing it to body. It's going to be therapy. But a client, like any other client would say, shall I pray or can I pray just to leave before I leave? I let them pray. That's what they feel is going to help them. So what is wrong when someone comes and says, can I have my sniff first? Because I need to so that I'm feeling comfortable. Then by the time the session goes on, there's a trance or someone who wants this and is engaged. But I allow the space for what it is, because if that's what healing means for them, I have to allow that to happen in that space. And not all psychologists will accommodate that.
Look, Anele speaks of allowing someone to come and do something. We had a visitor from the East End, from Ekurhuleni, came to ask for dentures patient. We may never find out, so I can speak freely about it. And she came twice. She came, she told me that her children, that's when we opened here in Fourways. She says, my children showed me your practice. They said, I can come and do my teeth. Fine, I'm here. But then before I came here, I was told to come and do other stuff. I said, what stuff? I hope you don't mind. He said, but I don't know you. And he says, don't worry. Those who know you have asked me to come and do this. And she came. She came while I'm taking measurements. She says, okay, you done, it's fine. Okay, you can step outside. Ask my assistant to step outside and we sit. We chat. Obviously our time is expensive. And then she does. She says, I hope you don't mind. I said, no, don't mind. She does her things. So she says, it is not your space.
Of course.
She does it. It was right at the beginning of this practice in Fourways. She does her things and she leaves, comes, collects it, then just disappears. I never saw her again.
In fact, what she was saying, you must introduce the space to who it belongs to.
You know? But let me tell you what we did. Whatever she gave us, we held on to it. She left us with things. She showed us what to do with the things. And we did the things, in case anyone is wondering. Yes, there's a bit of that in our practice.
Oh, yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah. In any case, so this, I like the way because somewhere down the line, there are questions that say, how do we stay true to our roots without suppressing our psyche with necessarily sticking on to Western? If we have a problem like which is considered a problem, psychosis, and how do we differentiate the two? You answered that very proficiently. To say you don't shut it out. You don't fight too hard to make the distinction. Because if you're not capable of doing it, obviously. Because if you were not having the best of both worlds, you would never be able to make the distinction.
Yeah, you'd rather be safe. Like our profession always advises us, always be neutral or refer. But again, clinical psychologists, for example, they were only trained to see psychosis for what it is.
Yeah.
The difference between one who has a deep appreciation of it and an experience of it, I'm able to go far beyond what the DSM suggests.
DSM being?
The diagnosis statistical manual that we use
It's
for
like a classification,
and we
categorization.
categorize what psychosis means, what depression is, and all of that. Now, I go deeper in there. Psychosis is going to tell you need hallucinations, that is, you need stimulus where some people, they see things, they hear things, sensory kind of sensations, delusions, fixed beliefs of things that are not there. There's a whole list. Now, with a symptom criteria of pure psychosis, there must be what we call a significant level of impairment. That is, this person, these voices, what they see, what they feel, what they believe, causes a destruction in their lives. It could be a relationship, it could be friends, it could be in any space that they are unable to function. Now, if we have a presentation that looks like psychosis of someone who have symptoms of uktwasa, those hallucinations, the hearing of voices, it's often ugogo or umkhulu, the ancestor, that communicates these messages to this person. However, when I read it from the one who's outside, I can deem it as insanity, because what you say, you see and hear, I do not see it. Now, if these hallucinations and delusions persist over time and it's the same thing, then it means there's something there.
Yeah.
Because there's no harm. It's a message as, tell Dr. K to do this, or suggest this, or you see this that is happening, the dreams that are coming with that. So
they're not destructive.
It's not destructive.
Yeah.
It's helpful to help the person to communicate, to transcend to the spiritual world, because we can't communicate like this. When Abapansi, our ancestors, Badimo, arrive with messages, there has to be that level of transcendence, which then would look like psychosis, because this person sees these things. And again, the level of hysteria that you see from someone who's clinically impaired and as one who's got messages, it's a different ball game. So even with depression and all of those things, because the deep sense of sadness and feeling all of those depressive symptoms, what we call anxiety, what we call it uvalo, litswalo, it could be a message coming from your ancestors that there's no clinical impairment there. Once a message comes and I tell you, uvalo luyahamba, I've told you the message, I'm okay.
One of the questions from the audience says, as a healer and a specialist in your field, how do you connect with your patients? I don't want us to answer that.
I can answer that.
No, but we've spent too much time. Because already you have said it.
Okay,
you have said it.
Three things. It's energy.
Yeah.
That's my source of
okay.
connection.
Okay, maybe that's most of connection.
You read people's energy. It's so easy, and again, the gift allows you to be able to suss out energies and connect with. I can already tell when a patient, we're not going to gel. And I'm going to do the ethical thing, which to see the person, but chances are I'll say to my PA, not again, don't book again.
Okay.
Secondly, it's the connection that comes with it. It's so easy and automatic. And again, by the time patients come to see me, they've done their research, they know who they come to see. That's how I connect with them.
Okay. We live in interesting times, Doc. You, what, 18 months ago I had my COVID-10, and you helped me with whatever you helped me with. But there's another element. They say patients still recover from COVID, but they are never the same again. No, many patients anyway. Those that recover, fortunately. And Anele, tell us, in your experience, how has it been? How bad has it been? And are we able to deal with the mental health issues that are associated with post-COVID problems?
I personally, I have been very paranoid.
Okay.
Paranoid about the fear of losing my life and losing my loved ones. But I got to a point of saying to myself, I'm not God. If one of us has to get COVID and die from it, it will be the case. But what COVID has done, we are a very paranoid nation, a very paranoid society. I don't even understand this thing. You go to the airport at the plane, they say social distance, but you're 3 people in one seat, you know, and everyone, you dare say, or you go, already someone is already thinking that. So paranoia and anxieties are a constant thing that over the 2 years and where we are now, actually, it's never getting any easier. You have change of season flu, doctor would know better. I was so paranoid over the past 2 weeks. I went to KZN for a weekend, and Sunday I was literally ill. The first thing in COVID in Bambil, like, I'm not going to go to the doctor because I know the results. So let me rather treat myself as a COVID patient. But the most difficult thing that I've seen with COVID is how we have battled with grief as a result of bereavement. I mean, I've had families, people would say 10 people died in a year to COVID. How is a psychologist able to say, I understand? I've stopped using that word, I understand. Because I would never understand what it feels to lose your mother, and subsequent to that, because your mother was living with your dad, a month down the line or weeks down the line, you lose your father, your mother.
The stories are very horrendous.
Very horrendous.
They're very painful.
It's painful, and already you're thinking of what's happening at home. I mean, some of us have even realized that even these monies that we cover our family members, when we know black tax is going to kill you if you don't prepare for such things.
Yes.
So it's been...
So now you must take a policy that doesn't say 12 people. You must go to 16 people.
16 people, and they cover.
And you actually use the whole policy.
You know, so COVID has not been easy. As a result of that, people have lost jobs. As a result of that, the scourge of gender-based violence, tomorrow is the last day of 16 days of activism. It has been the same thing over and over again. We are always perpetrators, men, particularly black men. So COVID has brought a range of problems after problem. How then do we recover from gender-based violence? Still within gender-based violence, COVID times, we've got people losing jobs, we've got pay cards. Life has to go on, but these things keep on happening.
I know there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Not always, but there is light. Every cloud has a silver lining. What's the most common breakthrough that you see people are consoling themselves with? I had one person who was scheduled to do certain procedures in my practice, and they disappeared for a while, and they come back to me. They say, no, I was out of a job. And because this meant so much to me, immediately I got a job back. I'm coming back for more treatment. What's the silver lining, generally? The economy is not going the way it's supposed to be going. But anyway, the economy is owned by only a few people, and
it's very hard again. This is systemic. A silver lining for someone who's in Ikunu and Limpopo is different. Silver lining of a middle class, high class, and very, you know, even banks have got private wealth. Eh? There are those black cards, but there are those real black cards.
Yeah.
Right? So our problems are not the same, right? So ideally, silver lining is a very difficult thing when I don't even know when my bread will come from tomorrow. And as a result, COVID is the last thing I'm thinking about when I'm confronted by poverty every day, when I'm confronted by gender-based violence. Where am I going to get that silver lining?
come on.
I know I'm a psychologist, but
Give me a takeaway. Yeah.
a takeaway of it. Well, we say people must talk, must see therapists, but therapists are inaccessible. We're expensive.
The money.
We're not rich. We're not easy to reach. I mean, the standardized medical rate is between 1.1 and 1.2. That is a whole grocery that can feed a family in Alex. So you say people must go to government hospitals. They're going to wait.
No. They're gonna get more stressed.
Okay. So silver lining is we can use whatever resources around us.
Yeah.
But the thing that people struggle with in South Africa is mental health. But mental health is very expensive. It's for the elite.
And we're not. I mean, a person tells you now, I've been raped. You are not able to be sensitive. Whether not only at the police station, at the hospital.
Even at home, we're gonna say, let's fix it the family way.
Yeah.
Or let's
So what more when you go to a clinic now and you say, I think I admit that I am not where I'm supposed to be mentally weak. They say,
or you're gonna have to wait. Like so mental health for me is the biggest thing that we can help people get through that silver lining.
Let's look to the new year.
Okay.
We do resolutions.
You are very optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, it's we cross over.
You cross over from this to
yeah. We know COVID is not going away, so that we're not ambitious about. Fine. We're finding ways to deal with it. We do resolutions. Please guide us as to realistically how we should channel our energy towards our resolutions.
When the old year ends, the new year begins with problems of the old year.
These two doctors I don't like very much.
No, he's right. But the one that can give you some hope,
Yes.
it's what I said when Bonodo was here, Dr. Bonodo, that each wave, if you take historically, doesn't last more than 3 to 4 months. Okay? So
The COVID wave.
Yeah, the COVID
We are
wave.
consoling ourselves that the COVID wave will not last that long.
You count from the first week of December, by Easter, this wave will be over. Do you understand?
Is that the best you can do?
That's the best. And if look, you have to hang on to something. If you don't have that, then you have a problem.
No, I refuse.
No, seriously. Anele,
Yes,
if
Doc?
you don't hang on to something, in other words, you're throwing your hands in the air.
Yeah.
So what are you living for?
I'm
You
not
have-
throwing my hands in the air. I'm saying let's think deeper.
No, you have to. But in that thinking, you're saying this thing will be over in the next 2 to 3 months. Then I can do X, Y, Z. We can start looking at things differently.
This is trying to give us hope
Okay.
via medicine, and I'm
Okay,
refusing
right.
to accept it.
Let me be an optimist, right? And be that which I hope a psychologist should do. New Year resolutions, again, they must be very realistic,
Okay, that I agree with.
right? Because we have very unreasonable expectations of ourselves. And the reason why we have mental health problems is because of those unrealistic expectations and these goals that we set. So be very reasonable when you plan your New Year resolutions. And maybe don't even call them New Year resolutions. Just call them things I hope to achieve. Like we all have key performance areas. when we are employed. Ideally, we should have that principle with ourselves so that we can always check in. So the new year, we hope and imagine that it's going to bring new realities. But our realities are so embedded in these waves that Dr. mentioned. Our realities are embedded in, the president can say tomorrow, I may have said, I've said I want to gym, right? I want to lose weight. Then the president says, all
Close the gyms, yeah.
Close the gym. So how is that achieved?
Oh no, he does not need to do that. He closes the beaches.
but
and one of the questions we have here,
in the same breath, ideally, we can plan resolutions, but we must be very wary of the execution and understanding that you always make a plan for what would not work, so that you don't get stressed in the end.
Okay. So, speaking of beaches, one of the questions that we had from our audience members when they knew that we were going to be talking to a healer, they said, can you just debunk in very short words that the connection we have with the beach? Some people go to sit on the beach towels and soak the sun. Some people go to lose their kids, unfortunately. Some people go to get drunk. Some people go to connect with the sea. The last one, please.
Yeah, connection is very important. And again, if you're going to go there for the connection, we've got what we call amadlozi, ancestors. They are those ones who are believed. They live emanzini, that is the ocean. We would hear people saying, "Ginedlozi lamanzi." Basically, this person says, I connect with water spirits. So in there, we believe those who are the owners of the ocean, they're actually the highest ultimate level powers of gifts and gifting. So ideally, when you go to Emanzini for connection, you don't go there bare hands. You carry white coins and you ask for permission. And ideally,
white coins?
White coins, yes.
Okay.
Don't bring
now we start to run.
and then you start calling all your clan names. Yes.
You know the old ones.
You then ask for permission, right? You do a consent form by putting that those coins in there. And there's a particular time for going there for connection. It's usually before sunset.
Okay.
Right? It's usually again with someone who has probably has twassed for that particular gift, to go there to seek for pardoning, to seek for clarity, to seek for guidance, and everything that spiritually it will connect with them. The downside of it is that when you are not ready to be welcomed there, or when they are not ready to welcome you, and when you are not in the right state, because there are certain things you shouldn't do before you go to Emanzini, chances are you may not come back.
Okay.
Yeah. So the spiritual connectedness part of it with the ocean, it's very important to understand the ethics and the rules of the
responsibility
of how you engage with Amanzi. You need to have someone who's more senior, who has probably undergone that journey to go to Emanzini. For recreational purposes, it's fine. But for those ones who have gifts along the lines of that, and people that probably died along the lineage of that Emanzini, it's usually not the right idea for you to go there.
And there's this other theory, because the sea, it's normally associated with the end of the world, at the end. And people believe that when I go stand there at the beach, I'm right there at the end where the world ends. And I'm able, the sea will take away all my problems with it, because I'm standing right there. It's like I can throw things into the...
Maybe no wonder black people like to go to the ocean.
Yeah, they do that.
No. On the 1st of the Cyril, the president can close on the 1st, because most of them, they go there to get drunk and lose kids. That I accept.
But I'm giving you this one where...
No, that I
you understand,
that.
you know that. Because you think when you go there, you have to walk on the sea or get into the sea. You cleanse yourself, and all your bad luck gets washed away. Because you're right there at the end of the world.
That's why we even get carried amanzi olwandle.
Yes, yes.
But again, there's another theory that I learned recently, which is actually, it makes sense. You must always know, if you take any ocean element, could be shells, stones, and all of that, when you bring those things at home, they increase the energy vibration.
Okay.
So you will struggle to sleep, and I've actually proved it to me. Give me. I have a lot of water elements that I had brought in at home, but now the day I took them out, my sleep is beautiful.
Is
because
it? So it might be positive or negative?
It's both.
Yeah.
But again, for me, there are things I have not yet done that I have to do, that I have to do with my journey of being a spiritual healer, that it's premature to bring those elements because I've not yet undergone the rites of passage that qualify me that I can bring those at home.
And then I hike in the Drakensberg back home, and the Tugela River actually begins in my area of the Drakensberg.
You're very privileged.
And I have seen people come with we've helped people up the chain ladders, spiritual healers, just agree they navigate, to navigate the terrain there, whatever, so they could take their people. The companionship you talk about,
yes,
when you go with someone that's qualified.
Yeah,
they go there and they go and they do their things, and it's something we grew up watching, and it's very difficult to climb there. It's 18 kilometers of climbing, of 5. It's very scientific, but anyway, the people climb very hard terrain to go and connect at the beginning of the Tugela River.
Yeah, and in retrospect, a man's water could be from waterfall, a river, a stream. There's an energy associated with those particular kinds of spaces where you are. Ulwandle, that the ocean is the highest ultimate level. And then for cleansing, you would say waterfall. There's a reason why someone would say, we'll do the cleansing at a flowing river or at a waterfall. So there are reasons why we connect with water. Theologically, water at church, we'll use it for baptism, right? Leave the politics of what kind of baptism it is, but water is signified for different things.
Doc, I would like you to give us something to take home for the new year. And while you are thinking about it, I will ask Anele those 2 questions that we wanted to ask him. In the most practical of ways, how can we prepare our parents? I know the Department of Education is supposed to be doing it now, not on the 15th of January. How can we prepare our families, our kids, in the most practical of ways for this COVID thing? What must we be, let alone the social distancing and other protocols? Parents are never to take their children to school. Parents, so children themselves are terrified because they got too many rules. I mean, leaving your car going into a shop, there's too many rules. Let alone where you're gonna go every day and be told by a strange teacher, behave, do this, do that. So what's practical here? What?
You mean on the exam part, or?
No. The exam part, we've delved into so many things. I'm talking about kids going back to school.
It's frustration for kids because
and the parents.
Yeah, I mean,
young parents
children
sometimes
can only be compliant to a certain degree. I mean, you can't. It's very hard to tell children not to touch your nose or not to touch any surface of your body part, or those that we always told not to. It's very frustrating for children. And again, we always speak of adult mental health, but we never speak of child mental health. So for me, if we can start focusing on how to enhance children's capacity and ability and insight to manage these demands and expectations, because it can be too much for children.
How do we do that?
How do we even know mental health for children as to what it is? For them, we always imagine them to be happy kids, but at the end of the day, it's not always the case. But it's a matter of sitting down with children to tell them why we have to comply. And by now, I guess they understand that COVID is the most...
I remember referring a 5-year-old to one of your colleagues in our previous practice.
I'm the horrible one that you can never present.
No, you had told me. Doc, you know what happened? A child of 5 comes into a school and finds out that all 5-year-olds have lost their front teeth. It's a big thing. He's a twin worse.
Yeah,
the other twin has lost tooth.
Has
lost the front teeth. And when you talk about child mental health, it's the weirdest things you have to deal with. And he comes, he says, Doc, the parents say, Doc, remove them. He's the odd one out.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's probably relative to that of a 5-year-old.
It is. It is in their world.
In fact, where you see that happening a lot, particularly at the level of school, it's where there's some poisoning at school, food poisoning at school. Do you understand? Out of about 20 of those kids who get admitted, taken to the hospital, they have nothing. 80% of them have nothing. They've just seen 1 or 2 who shared the sandwich maybe the previous day and who get a tummy bug. And let me tell you, the whole class will go into a psychosis. I'm sure you've seen that, where a huge number of school kids get admitted or taken to the hospital. Because it's, you know, kids want to do things that everybody else does.
Yes.
Do you understand? So they all get the headache, they all get the stomach aches, even if they are not actually affected. They reach the hospital, out of the 20, maybe 3 of them who shared that sandwich or ate common food are the ones who were actually affected. The rest is just a fear or wanting to belong to the class, to the group who actually were taken to the hospital. It's a children's thing.
So it's
that's
tough.
child sickness.
Even for kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the parents must brace themselves. They must
Children
take
go
it
through the
seriously.
most, and
So you should be doing counseling for the parents.
That I always say, whenever parents bring children, like, no, this child is a symptom of your bigger problem.
Yeah.
So I will do assessment, but mostly bring them.
Metric results. What's the best way you found we could cope with? We can't be harsh when the results are out and the children are in a mental state.
It's just that society has learned this good and bad culture of metric results. Back in the days, in generations where you could see people's names on the newspaper, it was a thing. It was extremely bad.
Make it or break it.
Make it or break it. But now it puts so much pressure on children that at the end of the day, those parents that have high expectations did not sit on the exam and wrote the paper. But they themselves, they don't even have the intellectual capacity of rising to getting a bachelor's entrance university access.
What's your advice?
My advice is we need to rethink the culture of metric results. It's putting
As a measure of
pressure.
success.
In fact, as the beginning of success, because if you don't have metric, it's like your life is doomed. Whereas there are children that are not necessarily academic, it's just that they've tried to be on the mainstream, but in the end they didn't strive in that stream. So for me, we need to rethink and have a different language for those who did not necessarily cut through what society has prescribed to be the definite of what success looks like.
If it's any consolation for you out there, my metric results were not enough for me to do dentistry or medicine. That's the truth.
Like I did.
Your results were not enough to do anything. Who said the same thing recently? That their results were not enough to do whatever they wanted to do. And the metric results are never enough. It is how you get up and go after that.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. And we don't have the
And
language.
there's always a second chance, yeah? Don't
And a
forget.
third chance.
And we don't talk about
And
that.
there's always a chance to do other things in life.
And again, what we need to emphasize is metric results or metric certificate does not translate to university access. There are learners who are not academic at all. And they've always known that. It's just that they need the paper to do what they need to do. And again, we need to speak to parents. If your child wants to do arts, they will thrive in their arts because that's what they want to do. So now parents cross fingers for a bachelor's entrance
In
because
science.
they want them to be doctors. They want them to be accountants. Then this child gets frustrated when they say, I want to go to an art school. Like, what are you going to do there? When we need a doctor, when you want to be an actor.
Yeah. In any case, Doc, give me something positive for the new year.
Well, I think
You've been trying to get doctor.
No, I gave him a chance.
no, because I know your focus is on COVID.
No, not COVID, Doc.
And
Take away from COVID. Give us something better.
I'm quite optimistic. I think over the past 2 years or 18 months, we have learned a lot on very many basic things that we've ignored all the time. And at the best of time, we ignored that. We thought it's not cool to wash one's hands. And I remember the likes of Hugh Masekela. It's one guy, of course, he never lived up to the time of COVID, but it's one man, I'm sure you've come across with him. I've introduced you to him. You could not shake Masekela's hand.
Really?
Yeah.
No, you couldn't. No, you refused. When he greets you, he takes a hug or a bow, okay, or fisting. He did that long ahead of COVID.
Yes.
And because he used to believe that you get infected, you can infect other people.
Okay.
By touching hands. So he never believed in the touching of hands. And we've learned, and this is the most basic of what we call.
And whoever you are.
I'm glad we've brought back the term
culture.
hygiene.
Yes.
Basic
Whoever
hygiene.
you are, it is a good thing to wash your hands many times.
Just wash your hands.
Many times. No.
Men don't wash
And
hands in the
because
bathroom.
of...
Men in the bathroom, they don't.
Yeah, that's
No, but
why
now
we shouldn't shake
of
hands.
course, I think now they are learning to wash their hands.
You just wonder, like, dude, here's a
That's why we shouldn't shake hands.
No, shaking of hands
Usually men
is
shouldn't.
the most dangerous thing that you can. You actually, it's like a relay race. You're just giving it over to somebody.
Now, Doc, because of that, there's two things I pick out from what you say. Because of that, there's less of other communicable diseases, the transmissible diseases. And there's less flu going around that's allowed to spread widely. And something very good you might have picked up. The economists have come up with it. People have taken on second hustles, side hustles.
Oh, yes.
People have looked for online ways to improve their lives. People have a child that's registered online doing normal schooling. You find they decided to do coding. They decided to do music online. They decided to do... That's a positive thing for us. And Wi-Fi has become a standard in the house now.
And let's make sure they don't join Forex.
Okay. I think we are done here.
Yes.
Anele, you know what, my brother? We will never be able to debunk this in one go. And we owe our people more interactions at this level. And our people know who we are. Our people will know where to find you when we give them information on our website. You will come back. I know I will go and fetch you. And tell me something else. Where do they find you instantly now?
On the gram.
On the gram. Instantly they'll find you on Instagram.
Instagram is
Anele Siswana.
Anele _Siswana. And bookings at anelesiswana.co.za.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is there.
Okay. So your details, my details, Dr. Minga's details, all our practitioners' details will be found on our website. And we can also, when you DM, if you're looking for any of the practitioners that have been on the programs, when you DM, we can give them to you. But we cannot give you directory of all the doctors in South Africa or Africa. Yeah. In any case, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a good ride, this episode especially. We hardly touched all the questions, but I understand why. I think now our audiences know the level at which they should pitch their questions because the answers we were giving were way different. It is almost New Year, Doc. We are hopeful.
It's upon us.
And we need to take care of ourselves as practitioners.
Oh, yeah.
And learn to say no.
Yes.
Patients, sometimes they can do without us when we don't have capacity.
Sometimes
when it's
no
break,
treatment.
when it's break, it must be our break. I always say a patient's emergency is not a priority for me sometimes.
Sometimes no treatment is good treatment.
They will find a way. When we need also to teach people that as practitioners, we also have a certain degree of capacity. I mean, Dr. Menga is in his old age. Why would you call Dr. Menga at 10 o'clock?
At night.
At night. It's an emergency, yes. But
Yeah, I agree with the second part, but I'm not sure if he agrees with this first part.
no,
I'll tell you about the issue of an emergency. I was still in Soweto just when we started the city clinic. I was living in Pinville. And that weekend I was on call around August, September. I gave an instruction to the casualty sister that please call me if it's an emergency. And but I always
that's where the problem started.
I always regard gynae as an emergency. You know, acute, they know, sisters know those kind of things. 2 o'clock in the morning, my blip rang. It was long before we had cell phones.
Yeah.
And then I called up, drive to the hospital. Let's see, from Pinville. I arrived there, and it's raining, it's wet, it's cold. Patient is waiting for me in the cubicle. 2 people. It's a couple. At 2:30 in the morning. And I said, what's the problem? Hey, doctor, as you told abantwana, I said, you tell me at 2:30 in the morning, you wake me up for before you leave here, you are going to leave double the consultation. At 2:30. Yes. I said, go back home and the weather allows it, the time allows it. Go home and try for babies.
The weather allows it.
Honestly speaking,
I mean, why do you tell me that?
I'd like to close. Doc, as always, thank you very much. You reveal certain parts of our world that I know I'll never experience. Gentlemen, thank you. It was a pleasure. This is Ask Your Doctors, and you see what they get up to sometimes. Please give us questions on our social media pages, and we will get experts to do their best to answer them as simply as possible. Thank you for watching.